Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 319 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here. Excited for you to hear this guest who I've been thinking about having on the show for a few years now, and I'm excited to introduce you to her. But first, have you checked out Together Runs yet? Have you come with me on these really powerful runs where I take my microphone with me, go for a run? I promise you, you will feel connected and part of a community and as if you are running with someone, even if you are running alone, which you will be if you're listening to a Together Run. But they are such a powerful thing that we are doing here at Running for Real. I'm really proud of them. We have some special things coming. So if you haven't already checked them out, go find them. Wherever you're listening to this, go check out our Together Runs and let me know what you think. Okay, today I am excited to welcome Jasmin Paris to the show. Jasmin has been a national trail running champion in both 2015 and 2018. She set many different records for trail running, for ultra running. She set a race record in the 2019 Spine race along the Pennine Way, finishing the 268 miles. Crazy, right? 268 miles in 83 hours, 12 minutes and 23 seconds. Now, to just give you some context for that, she was the first woman to win it. She surpassed the previous record of 95 hours and 17 minutes, set in 2016. So you had that 95 hours was the fastest man, and the previous female record was 109 hours, 54 minutes. So absolutely smashed it, and she has done a lot with her running to be very successful in the community. And most recently, she decided to part with her sponsors to be able to run at UTMB for a environmental group that she is a co-founder called The Green Runners. You're going to hear more about The Green Runners today, her choice to do that, and just a bit about her story. She also is kind of known for the viral photo of her breastfeeding or expressing milk or pumping milk for her baby at 14 months while she was doing an ultra. So you probably have seen that iconic photo, which really started the conversation around mothers and running postpartum. So without any further ado, let's go meet Jasmin. Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, you've heard me talking about Athletic Greens for years now. It allows you to say goodbye to piles of pills and countless powders. One daily serving of AG1 delivers this potent blend of 9 health products, a multivitamin, minerals, probiotics, adaptogens, and more. It's the comprehensive foundational nutrition you need with the convenience for your life demands. Now, that applies to me in a way I cannot even describe. With 2 young kids, I know I should be getting 27 different fruits and vegetables in a day, but honestly, some days I'm lucky if I can get 1 or 2 at dinner. And it is difficult for me to take care of myself with just this hectic life that I live. So while I want to make these green juices every morning, with a juicer machine, with the kale and the ginger and the lemon and all those other things, I just don't have the time for it. I can barely get to stuff something down my throat to eat. And I love that I can wake up before the girls wake up, drink down my 1 scoop of Athletic Greens with ice cold water, drink it down, know that I've got 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients to start my day, so that even if that day ends up being hectic and running around all over the place, I know I've got that in. It tastes good. It's almost a slight pineapple-y taste. I love drinking it before I run. I drink it and go immediately out the door. It's going to help with your gut health. It's going to support your immunity. It's going to boost your energy and help with the recovery. What more can you ask for with one scoop? So you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina. You will get 5 free travel packs and a 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 and K2. Now, as we head into the winter months, that is when we need that vitamin D, and it works well with the K3 as well to absorb better. We need those to protect us from all the nasty sicknesses that are coming around. So be sure to go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to go check out my special offer and stop stressing about not getting those fruits and vegetables in. This is going to take care of you. Jasmin, thank you so much for joining me on the Running For Real podcast. I am very excited that you are here. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, you're someone that I've wanted to interview for years now. And I have to admit, I know that you had a similar situation like me, where your story went on this little weird viral thing and then kind of calmed back down. And that was when I was first drawn attention to. And I think many people maybe would recognize your name as your story went viral when you set a course record in the 2019 spine race along the Pennine Way, which is considered the most brutal. Is it considered a race? I suppose it is.
Yeah.
Still a race in the UK. I didn't know if there was another word for like multi-day. I guess it would be race still, wouldn't it? Anyway, you set the record and went viral because you did stop to breastfeed during some of the stations, and so that was the part that really went viral. But I have seen from you that while that was, you were glad to draw attention to breastfeeding in public, it actually for you was a bit surreal that was the part that went viral. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't actually breastfeeding my daughter. I was expressing milk at the aid stations because at the time I was breastfeeding her. Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, the whole thing was a bit surreal. All the attention that I got in terms, it was just a bit overwhelming for someone that kind of prefers, I guess, to be fairly low key.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought it was really positive. All the attention that the story received, both in terms of breastfeeding and in terms of women in sport, and continuing to kind of do things for yourself once you're a mother as well, and actually just for women, and also I guess just in terms of believing in yourself, regardless of who you are. I thought it was positive, but it was quite overwhelming.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was, especially something like, when people are talking about something that is a private part of your body. And that's going around the internet. I'd imagine that was surreal, even though it's such a natural thing to be doing. So let's go on. I want to go backwards in a minute and talk about your, a lot of the impressive things that you have done as a runner. And I want to start with your early days, getting into your childhood, and then when you started becoming a quote unquote runner. But before that, just going back to that viral moment, now that a few years have passed, reflecting back on that race in particular, and just, women in general, and the conversations around women in sport, particularly after having children, do you feel like things have come along since then, or do you feel like we're pretty much at the same point?
I think there is progress all the time. I mean, I haven't actually kind of noticed. I didn't think it was. I guess I didn't feel like there were barriers in the first place. I mean, I just went out and did what I wanted to do. I didn't really consider it a barrier. I still wanted to do sport, and so I didn't feel like there was a barrier to be broken down. But it's more kind of, I guess, what other people think, and maybe how it's perceived in society. That's something I probably didn't have a massive handle on, and probably still don't have any better handle on. But I think there's progress. There has to be, because more people talking about it. Like Sophie Power did the ETMB and breastfed her baby at breast aid stations. And Emily Fosberg, who's really well-known mountain runner as well. She's just had 2 kids, and she's talked about it a lot on social media. So I think just in the era of social media, more people are kind of sharing their stories, and more athletes are sharing their stories. And I guess the fact that, women athletes probably have more of a platform now, and with things like the Euros, the women's football team here in the UK, and then just generally, the kind of there's quite a lot of coverage of big sponsors dropping women when they were pregnant, and I think that got lots of attention, quite rightly. So I think there is progress, but you only have to have a look at the salaries of the women football players versus the men to know that there's still a long way to go. So, yes. But personally, from my point of view, I didn't feel there were barriers when I went out to run the Spine. It was, I did what I wanted to do, and I'll continue to do what I want to do. Yeah.
Do you think that would have? Do you think you're just not someone who would ever really pay attention to that, or do you think if someone had maybe showed you, about the women who with that whole Dream Maternity campaign, showing with the New York Times showing about Alicia Montano and Alison Felix and everything, and all these other women who had maybe been kind of made to feel that they couldn't do anything after their career, do you think that would have changed your approach to the race, or are you not someone who would ever think about that?
I don't think so, because I continued to do exercise during pregnancy, and I was really keen to get back doing it straight as I could after I'd given birth. And ultimately for me, I do the running, and because I enjoy being in the mountains, and it makes me feel happy, and it takes me to kind of all the wild places that I want to go on a kind of daily basis. And for me, it's kind of a way of life. So I was going to do that regardless of whether I was competing and so on. But I do think, I think it's really positive that it is receiving lots of attention. I think it's absolutely terrible that a sponsor would drop a woman while she was pregnant or on maternity leave, or cut the salary. So, so I think it's really positive that it's getting lots of attention. I don't think I'm just generally not the sort of person to be that bothered about what kind of social expectations are or norms are. I just kind of do my own thing largely.
And while
that doesn't influence me,
while that's something in you that you just maybe have as a trait, do you have any advice for someone listening who does tend to struggle with feeling pressure of what society thinks they should be doing?
Yeah, so it's quite a hard question, I guess. So maybe I've always been, I guess maybe a little bit comes from self-confidence to like believe in what you think's right, and what you kind of believe in your heart. Also, I guess people follow the crowd, but it's not necessarily for the right reasons. And then you realize. But in terms of advice, I mean, I would just say to do what you feel is right and what makes you happy. I think it's probably, it's great if there can be role models, I guess, and people that share their stories, and kind of elite athletes as well as just as everybody. But in terms of advice, the main thing would be to try not to kind of let social, I guess in terms of exercise and pregnancy and maternity, I guess my only reservation would be to make sure that it's, from a kind of medical point of view, that it's okay. And then beyond that, then to kind of go with what your body tells you. That's kind of what I did all the way through pregnancy, and afterwards kind of listen to my body. I tend to do that anyway, but I think when I was pregnant and afterwards I listened to it. I was extra cautious to listen to it. But other than that, I guess if trying to summarize it, I guess if you not so much listening to other people unless it's a medical professional and they're seriously advising you not to. I think the main thing would be listen instead to your body and what that's telling you, and to your heart.
I am a big proponent of both of those things. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so let's go backwards in your story a little bit. Many runners come into this space with either running high school, college, running in the running in their history somehow. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how outdoors was involved in your upbringing, but not necessarily running.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of easy to answer because I wasn't a runner till I don't really consider myself a runner until I left university. So I did lots of hiking with my parents from quite a young age. So my parents kind of, I guess they took me, they hiked with me in the Andes when I was like a year old, and they carried me across on their backs across those mountains. And then after that, we'd go quite early on. We went on hiking trips and then carried our own little rucksacks and slept out under the stars and that sort of thing. So I guess that was just part of my nature. And once we were old enough, me and my brother, who's just 15 months younger, so we're pretty close in age, we'd sort of take all our stuff and go for like 7 to 10 days to mountains kind of all over Europe. The wilder the better. And the aim would really be not to see anyone for kind of for that whole time. We'd take enough food to last us the whole time. Always started with really big bags, and then as the week went on, it got lighter and lighter. So I think really that was kind of my formative mountain time. And I didn't really start running till I left university. So I guess I was like in my early 20s. And then I started doing some fell running, but really kind of my background as a hill walker.
And so was it just a case of one day you kind of started, rather than walking, you jogged a little bit, or did someone say like, you should try this running thing?
Yes, I think it was probably a few things that came together. The kind of catalyst, I guess, that in the end, although I think it would have happened anyway, is that I was working in a small animal practice in my first job post graduation, and a colleague suggested who was a fell runner, a hill runner, suggested I went along to a local fell race, and I did. And I had only like sort of road trainers. I fell over a lot of times on the descent because I just slipped. But I loved it. I was and I was very much nowhere near the top of the field. But I was so kind of oxygen deficient by the time I finished. But I thought, this is fantastic. These people are running around on the hills for fun. I think I found the people that I can really, really understand. These people, understand me. And I just fell in love with it that day. I joined a local club that was in Glossop, and I started to kind of fell running in the evenings with them. And it just sort of opened up a whole new world for me. It was a really special time. And then I actually had to, as part of my kind of training, because I wanted to be a specialist vet, I went to the States for a year the following year. And I really missed the running then. Once I'd kind of really started to do it, it was a big hole in my life. And I tried to run in the States, but there everything was concreted, and I lived in a big city and I didn't have a car. So it was difficult. And it was one of the joys of moving back to the UK and back to Edinburgh when I came to do my residency here was being back on the fells.
Yeah, so I know this is like a roll your eyes question, but as I have a lot of American listeners, can you explain what fell running is compared to trail running?
Yeah, so I guess, so trail running, well, I think of trail running, I think of kind of fairly well-kept paths, or at least you're on a trail, I guess, where some sort of
marked,
some sort of marked path. Certainly in races, often trail races are marked. A fell race is, and it's kind of something that's maybe a little bit unique to the UK because we have the right sort of hills for it, because they're not too kind of precipitously steep or rocky or forest covered. They're basically fairly runnable, so they're often covered in heather or kind of wild grass, and so they kind of lend themselves to running just over in any kind of direction. So basically fell races, shorter ones might have a kind of more defined route, but often the longer classic races, there'll be checkpoints along the way, but between them you can kind of go whichever way you like, and you have to navigate. So that's part of it. It's either you know it by heart, or you navigate. And obviously, if the mist is down, then you have to do some navigation, whichever happens. So that's kind of. And then they're just, they're pretty low key. They rarely have any kind of big sort of sponsorship or media presence there, they tend to have kind of pretty low-key prizes like a bottle of wine or a homemade cake, super friendly. And they often finish with like soup and tea and cake. So lots of home baking involved. And real kind of gnarly, proper rough races in the hills. I really love it.
Tracksmith is an independent running brand inspired by a deep love of the sport. For years, the brand has elevated running wear using best-in-class materials in timeless silhouettes that perform at the highest level. Now, they're doing the same with footwear. The Elliott Runner was developed to meet the rigorous demands of committed runners, providing the perfect balance of cushioning and responsiveness with classic Tracksmith style. The inspiration for the Elliott Runner started with a feeling many runners experience, the delight in finding a natural surface while out for a run. Logging thousands of miles across New England, the Tracksmith team found those moments on pine needle trails, wood chip paths, and indoor tracks. That's the sensation they wanted to bring to the roads. Soft, resilient, responsive, and ready for anything. Step into the Elliott Runner, a Pebax-powered trainer inspired by the pep of New England's natural surfaces. See the Elliott Runner in person at Tracksmith pop-ups at the London and Chicago marathons and their Boston store this fall, before an exclusive opportunity to pre-order on October 24th. For more information, visit tracksmith.com/Tina. That's tracksmith.com/Tina. Now, I think there's something about, a lot of running now, including trail running, has become commercialized, about prizes, about sponsors and things. And I do love the traditional classic sense of fell running. I haven't ever done a fell race, but now hearing you explain it. And one other thing I want to add for my American listeners is in the UK, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't lived in the UK since I was 18, but I do go back regularly, or, once a year. So in the UK, you can pretty much go most places on people's land or not on people's land. People don't mind as long as you're not running around waving your arms, scaring all their animals. You can pretty much go where you want to go. And so that lends itself to fell running. Whereas here in the US, there's a lot of no trespassing. This is my property. Can't go through here. And so it makes it a lot more difficult I think, for many people listening to envision how that could possibly be the case. And yes, in the trails or like you said, in the forests, you could, there's marked paths. But even that, I would say, in a lot of state parks and national reserves, you are told to keep to the path. So it is just a totally different thing. But I wanted to mention that point about the UK having, what's the word? Public
right of way.
Yeah,
right to roam.
So you can go, and that's why it lends itself to fell running. And I love that. And I haven't ever done a fell race, but I have been, now you're saying it, when I go visit my aunt in Shropshire, I have technically been doing fell running because I'd be like, I want to go up there. And then I just kind of find a way up there. So yeah, I think it's so hard for just the way America is laid out and maybe some other countries to imagine that. But it is really fun, as you mentioned, the just kind of humbleness of it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's another thing. Fell running, there's something really incredible athletes. I'm going to say Finley Wild because I think he's currently one of the best athletes in the world. Certainly as a runner, and he's so humble. And he basically, fell racing is so kind of non-elitist. The very best people line up with the very slowest, and it makes absolutely no difference. You all share tea and cake at the end, and nobody really cares. There's some competition, but it's really friendly. And as I say, the athletes are pretty incredible. It's just they don't get the kind of the big spotlight on them. Yeah.
And how do you feel when you go from doing that to something like UTMB, which is this global event? It's very, it seems, at least from what I see, maybe it's just who I'm paying attention to, that there's kind of a commercialization to it. It's like this yeah, like almost like the Super Bowl of trail running every year. Or I suppose Super Bowl would be the World Cup for people outside the US. So how do you handle that mentally when you're kind of thrown into this like very it's kind of like the opposite of what you're doing most of the time?
Yeah, absolutely. The UTMB is just a world apart from kind of traditional fell racing. And I have to say, absolutely say it, straight out that I very much am more a fell racer than a UTMB racer. I guess the reason I've gone back to the UTMB and potentially will again is just to kind of compete on that kind of world-class stage, right at the kind of the top of long distance kind of mountain running. I think if you go to the UTMB, the way I've kind of handled that is just to like enjoy it, just embrace the craziness of all the people, because I think what makes that race, because I'm actually quite against like how commercial it is and how they make you travel across the world potentially to get running stones to be able to run their race, and all that kind of side of it, and all the gear people buy and everything else. But I guess what I take from it and what I enjoy about it is the people, because it's incredible. The atmosphere is just out of this world. The people along the trail, even in the middle of the night, there'll be somebody playing an accordion high on a mountain pass, and there's kids that stay up till goodness knows what time, ringing kettlebells along the route, and there's like bonfires and there's fire jugglers, and like going up that bit from Contamine is like there's people kind of parting. It's like the parting of the seas to let you through, and they're all like drumming in your ears and clapping and shouting, and the atmosphere is amazing. And then you look behind you and there's this massive trail of torches all the way down the two valleys in the night. So you just have to I think you just have to enjoy that. You just have to like be, the way I've done it is just said, this is not a fell race. I'm not, I'm here doing something completely different. Just enjoy it. But then I'm very happy to go back to my UK fell racing again.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned about the travel, that UTMB makes people do to qualify, and that's what you're referring to, right? About any certain races.
Yeah. So they didn't, like it used to. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on this, because I'm definitely not, but it used to be that you have to have a certain number of points in kind of long distance races to be able to enter. And I guess that's potentially their way of vetting to make sure that people actually have the ability to run that distance and that sort of a race. I think it's now changed a bit, and the more races you've run, the more chance you have of getting a place in their lottery. But regardless of what happens, you have to have at least one of these running stones. And you get those by running specific races in their World Series. Here, if I was to do it, I can try and do it by, I would run a race in Snowdonia, so it wouldn't be traveling that far. But in general, I think it encourages people to fly across the world to run the races in their World Series to get as many points as they can to qualify for the UTMB. So I don't really agree. I think we should be encouraging people to try and, travel less and travel by kind of land rather than air, if we want to save our mountains, which is ultimately what I imagine all people actually that want to do that love trail running and fell running. So yeah.
When you say save our mountains, what do you mean by that?
I guess try to get. I know in just being climate aware and planet friendly, to put it kind of, I guess, really basically, but being aware that we're facing a climate crisis, we need to massively cut our carbon footprint, and we're not going to do that by flying regularly across the world to run races in the UTMB World Series.
Yep. Thank you for explaining that. We're going to talk about green runners in a minute, which actually let's just do that now. So tell us about green runners, and the decision that you made to run for green runners instead of your sponsor who you'd been working with up until this year.
Yeah, so I guess, the green runners came about after COP26. I think a group of runners, we went there and met up and potentially a little bit disillusioned about how much progress there seemed to have been. And I was chatting, I think it was a number of chats that happened there, and then it came about. So a group of we're runners with kind of aiming to inform people and try and kind of gather people together in the running community to think about their impact on the environment, and both in terms of when they run, and but also I guess generally when during their kind of general lives. So it's kind of trying to empower the running community and inform them to make better decisions in terms of our planet. So that's kind of the Green Runners, and we just kind of had lots of meetings and chats, and now it's kind of, we've got a proper community, Twitter and Instagram, and there's a Facebook page, but importantly we have these kind of 4 pillars. So very briefly, the kind of 4 pillars of the movement are how you kit up, how you move, and how you fuel yourself, and how you speak out. So those are kind of the 4 pillars, and I'm happy to kind of go into those a bit more. So so those, as part of that, one of them obviously the pillars is how you move, and that, and particularly in terms of runners, we'll be thinking about how you move to races. And we know that the kind of carbon, the kind of climate impact, carbon footprint of big races like the UTMB is primarily in that travel section. Because of people kind of traveling there from all over the world. So I traveled to the UTMB by train, and representing the Green Runners. And to be honest, I've never felt entirely comfortable about kind of running for a sponsor, kind of a company. I had a really, really good relationship with the kind of the Innovate who supported me previously, and it was very, very friendly when I kind of said I don't really want to do it anymore. But it was partly because I've never massively loved the kind of spotlight of being kind of highlighted and talked about, but certainly not in terms of selling more gear than for a company. So I stepped down from that, and I thought, well, if I'm going to have to represent somebody, if I'm going to be kind of talked about on social media, then let it be for something that I think is really worthwhile. And that's why I said that I'll do the UTMB for the Green Runners, just because I thought, well, if somebody, at least it might be positive that way if I get kind of social media attention for any future runs that I do.
Did it get any attention? I'm just curious, when you didn't have the race you hoped for, but did you get some conversations going about it?
Yeah, I think it was really, really positive, actually. I mean, we definitely had lots of people signing up for the Green Runners, since then, there's been a lot of kind of, I guess I see it from a biased point of view, but because I kind of get it directly to me, but see it directly. But there's, even interacting on kind of social media with people posting comments about how they are traveling to races by train and fueling themselves in kind of more planet-friendly ways, plant-based nutrition, and or reusing kit and sharing lifts to races, all that kind of stuff. There's been lots of chat about it, and I think it was really, really positive, actually. So that's a really positive thing to take away from the UTMB, even if my race didn't go quite as I'd hoped. At least there was still lots of discussion. Probably would have been better if I'd won it, because then there would have been even more discussion. But I guess I'll have to wait for another time.
So give us a bit more for someone. So I have not done this yet, I will admit that, but I have been intending to. So by the time this comes out, I don't want to. I don't want to say some words that I haven't thought through enough to research what exactly I'm referring to before I commit to them. For example, I will use example. I'm not using this as an escape for anyone, but if I'm already a vegetarian, if I make a pledge, eat wise, how can I take that a step further? I don't want to say only eating dairy products that are sustainably sourced when that is not actually a thing, or something like that. I want to make sure I've looked this up a little more. But I will, the day this comes out, I will put that out. Okay, so tell us what the 4 pillars are that you created, or that the Green Runners created, and give us a little more explanation into each.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'd love to do that. So let's start with how you kit up. So I think the main thing would be the kit that you've already got is the most sustainable kit that you can have. So if you've got something, use it for as long as it can, as you can. Repair it, because shoes can be repaired. Look after them better, repair them, make them last for as long as you can. I think in shoes in particular, the kind of big point would be that lots of people think that you have to throw away shoes after a certain number of miles. I can tell you, I wear them till they literally fall apart on my feet. And the last pair I had fell apart when I was in Italy this summer, and had to tape them together to get down from the col. So
can I pause you on that one? When you say about wearing them, like, what about the soles? Like, if you're a fell runner and like, how do you know you have enough traction? I'm curious with
So to be honest, generally I have one pair that I wear for races, and then I have one pair that I wear in training, and the ones in training I would wear till they were like, to be honest, the tops have fallen apart before the bottoms. But basically, even when there wasn't much tread out, then I would switch to using them on more kind of traily terrain where I didn't need as much traction. But generally, I actually only have two kind of different shoes now. I'll have one that's kind of more pure fell running shoe, and then a kind of traily shoe. And for both, I might have I currently have a pair that I would use for racing with better tread. And then they would just get downgraded to being like the general running shoe when the general running shoe fell apart, kind of thing, the training shoe.
And do you do most of your running on the softer terrain, on the trails and things? Do you run on cement at all?
I have like about 10, 12 minutes to get to a hill from my front door. So I guess that's like 25 minutes return every day.
Yeah, because that's more the concern I think that many of the listeners would be, well, I'm running on cement every day. So, is this safe for me to keep running when my shoes have 1,000 miles on them, like cement wise? I don't expect you to have an answer to that, but I think that I could see that being
I can take that. Damien Hall has just written a book. My suggestion would be that I imagine he talks about it a lot, that sort of stuff in the book. I've not actually got around to reading it.
October, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Have just got a copy, so that's my reading list for this week.
Okay. Well, my listeners know I'm also writing a book with someone over here on a similar topic to Damien, so that comes out next year. But okay, so let's continue. So you've done kit up, you've done move. We explained that one. What about the other two?
Yeah. So I realized I never actually finished kit up. Just the only thing would be obviously recycle, repair. If you don't like something, I guess then swap with someone else, but really, really kind of try and make the kit you've got last as long as possible. And then I think when you're buying new kit, think about how sustainable it is, and also aiming to kind of buy kit that's going to last you a long time. You don't need new colours for each season, that sort of thing. Right. Yeah. So that's kit.
Wait, can I ask one more about kit? Sorry. This is a selfish one. I find I don't know if it's different in the races that you're doing, but a lot of races, make you have a shirt or make you sign up for a shirt, even if you don't pick it up. I often don't. You have to choose, but like you do not have an option to choose and say, I do not want a shirt. And I know you can say in a minute a little bit about trees for tees, which I love. But for races that don't have that, have you had experiences where you've had to, you've had a race shirt that they've, set aside for you as you didn't have a choice?
Yeah. So I would say, no, I'd say I don't want it. And I would say email the organisers, make it like really clear that you don't want it. Tweet about it on social media or whatever. That would be kind of my approach now, because I mean, we're all, if you race a lot, then you end up with a lot of t-shirts, don't you? Yeah, the only one person I'm thinking of is my husband, who actually does use them. That's like his only t-shirts. So he's the only person that's grateful for the race t-shirts. But I think for the majority of the time, I mean, Trees Not Tees is a fantastic kind of initiative whereby race organisers can choose to can offer you the option of planting a tree rather than getting a t-shirt. And I think that's perfect, because there'll be some people that run a race and they've been working towards it all year, and for them it's a massive thing. It might be the first time they've run a marathon, or they've run it in memory of somebody, or whatever it is. And if that's the sort of situation, like, I get it. You want a t-shirt to say that you did it, and it's like a huge thing. So don't want to deny people a t-shirt in that situation if that's what they're so kind of passionate for. But let everybody else be able to choose a tree, and then the organizers can potentially make some t-shirts without the date on it, and then they can use them for years, and then they can just use as many as they need, and rather than every year producing masses, the majority of which people won't want. So yeah, that would be my feeling.
Thank you. Yep. Love that advice, and very similar to what I say myself. Okay. Eat and speak out.
Yeah, so eat. You've mentioned that you're a vegetarian. Like I guess the kind of well, we know, don't we, that red meat is generally really bad. Dairy is pretty bad. I guess ideally a plant-based diet is kind of the way to go. And everybody's going to be different with this. And I certainly know that I think diets probably, in terms of the green runners, the thing that we've had like the biggest kind of pushback on, maybe. Yeah, because I don't know. I get it as well. Like I kind of full disclosure, I'm not full vegan. In fact, before the green runners, I wasn't even I wouldn't even have described myself as a partial vegan or anything, or even kind of trying to be vegan. Now I am making more of an effort. Obviously, kind of fitting into family life, it's kind of a work in progress. But just as an example, in my household, we don't really eat red meat anymore. But we also, I've switched to drinking oat milk, and for me, actually, for our family, that's actually halved our dairy milk consumption. So just things like that, and I'm kind of experimenting now with dairy-free cheeses, which is hard work.
Cheese is a tough one, yeah.
That is a tough one, yeah. But I think it's getting better, because you obviously, like, the bigger the kind of the bigger the consumer demand for it is, the kind of the more it's moving forward. And lots of people have kind of commented that it's much easier now to be a vegan than it used to be. But I guess it's kind of a little steps, like for each person, there'll be different levels of what they can do. But I think once you start doing it, then you kind of continue to do it, you're making gradual progress. And I definitely feel that myself, like I'm definitely improving and making progress. So, that was me. So when I when I did the UTMB, I kind of, all my nutrition that I took and things was vegan. It was all right. It was like, it wasn't that much of a change from usual. So, in terms of what I would have taken anyway, wasn't. So, but I think in terms of that, the big thing would be races should offer more vegan food at checkpoints, or make it clear, because it was difficult. Like, it's not, when you get to a checkpoint, it wasn't clear what might be vegan, what might not, unless you, for example, take fruit.
Would not be vegan then at a checkpoint?
Well, I'm guessing things like cake probably isn't. Like, would it be? I mean, the UTMB offers cheese, ham. You get soup. I mean, you assume that's the noodle soup is probably vegan, but you just have to kind of guess. Chocolate obviously probably isn't. So there's lots of kind of alternatives that you could have there that would be vegan. It'd be probably good if races, even if they don't offer full vegan food, they could at least kind of make it clear what would be, and then give people the option. And there's some race organisers that, I think the Shane Ole's events are now vegan. So, bean stew and things like that's pretty easy to kind of cater to everybody with that. So, that's kind of food. And then what was the last? And the last one was speak out, which is undeniably, I'm sure it's the most important one, because whilst we all can make a difference, just by our own individual efforts, it's not going to, we know that the big crux point is whether with that, I'm certainly not an expert, but with that, governments and big oil companies, and that's kind of, that we need change at that level. And that's not going to happen. Like, our individual action's not going to help there, but the kind of the bigger community movement in terms of demanding change, the more people that are demanding change, the more likely things are to start changing. So speaking out, I think, is really important.
Hi friends, just pausing this episode to just let you know a few of the things we have been up to and are up to behind the scenes at Running for Real. Firstly, if you are not already signed up for the weekly newsletter that comes out every Monday, they are very, very popular. They are full of Tina-like rambles. There's also recommendations, things that I think you should check out. You can also keep up to date with what we've been doing with Running for Real that week and so much more. People really enjoy them. And I think you will too if you like these episodes. Secondly, if you have amenorrhea or red S, if you are in recovery from amenorrhea or red S, I would love if you would get into contact with our team. If you reach out to Sally at runningforreal.com, or you can reach out to me on any of the social media platforms, I would love to hear from you. We are working on something that is going to be life-changing. We are working with the experts and I'm very excited about it. So if you are someone who is struggling with amenorrhea or red S, please reach out to me and let me know. Finally, I want to let you know about some of the other podcast episodes that you may have missed. We have our weekly Stride episodes on Wednesdays, which are very fun, lighthearted, answering your questions, kind of like an Ask Me Almost Anything type episode. Those are usually 4 to 8 minutes long, so very short, just something you can listen to while you're on a quick drive, while you're washing the dishes, or whatever else you could be doing. And we also have Together Runs. Now, you're hearing us talk a lot about Together Runs lately, and that is because these are something special. You will see as soon as you give them a try, these are special. One last thing, I said finally already, but one last thing. If you are running Chicago Marathon, let me know. If you are running New York Marathon, let me know. And if you happen to be in LA, Venice Beach area around the 16th of September, let me know about that ASAP. Thank you so much to those of you who have continued to connect with us. We love getting to know you. We love hearing from you. Go check out all we are up to at runningforreal.com. So can you give some examples for someone who maybe hasn't spoken out before? What would be an example of a pledge that some people have made about speaking out if they are kind of deciding to do this for the first time?
I mean, I think it can, honestly, I think this can be on so many different levels. So, you might be comfortable on social media. So you might be wanting, you might share your opinions. You might heckle people. You might share media articles about climate change. So that's kind of one level. It might also be, you sat in the canteen at work and someone asks you why you've switched to vegan eating, and then you explain to them, it's on so many different levels, this kind of point. And I think, for me, it was going to the UTMB and talking about it. So, if even being a green runner and actually, trying to make some changes and posting a pledge with your picture to the green runners, and then they share it on the website, and you go to a race and then you have your badge on and you're representing green runners and actually doing something, with your pledge. And those are all things that all ways in which you can. And then there's obviously joining in protests, and we currently I'm doing part of this running out of time relay in a few weeks' time, running from COP26 to COP27. So there's so many different ways you can get involved, but I just think the more that we can talk about it, I guess for me, I have anxiety. I have anxiety about the future, about the future of my children. But at least actively doing something in some ways it's good as well. It's helpful for that anxiety because at least I'm trying.
I am with you 100%. Feel the same anxieties and I find the same thing. If I do something, then that's calms it a little bit. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for the examples there, because I think that's really helpful. And especially as you notice that it doesn't have to be a big thing on social media. If someone's not a social media person, it can be, talking to people, or, we just had our front garden, our front lawn landscaped, and we had someone come in and put all native plants to this area. And so when people said, in my street said, I saw you had your lawn landscaped. And I said, we did it with native plants because native plants require less water. They're obviously better for the pollinators and the wildlife and everything. And I started like explaining why we made that decision. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be something just, within your own community.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
And something else you mentioned was like race organizers. You said the thing about t-shirts, but that would be another example. Like asking race organizers to consider trees, not teas, asking them to consider what food they're offering, plastic cups and not plastic cups, that sort of thing. And also one thing we did mention with travel was whether race organizers, for example, have the start time compatible with a local train station. Can you get there by train? And if so, does the race start at a time that actually allows you to do that? Because it might just be a case of moving the start time by half an hour to make it possible to get there by train. On a Sunday morning, for example, and that's something a race organizer could change, but they just need to be told that that's something that they need to do. So there's kind of ways that you can badger race organizers as well to try and join the green runners movement, even if they're doing it kind of unconsciously.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm actually, this might be close to coming out by the time this comes out, but for Chicago Marathon, I'm taking the train from where I live in St. Louis up to Chicago, which is like a 6-7 hour train ride, I think. And I've never done that, but you and Damien and the other things that the Green Runners are doing kind of inspired me to do that, because I'm helping Chicago with their sustainability initiatives. So I was like, well, I have to walk the walk here. And so I'm actually quite excited to see what they do, because Chicago is by far and away the best marathon, definitely in the US, in terms of sustainability. They do a lot of initiatives to really put it at the forefront. And so I'm quite excited to actually see if a big race that has, I don't know how many people Chicago Marathon has, maybe 20 or 30,000. If a big race can do that, then what is everyone else waiting for? So yeah. I'm looking forward to sharing about that as well. Okay, so let's go back to your running for just a little bit, and I'll put a link to the Green Runners in the show notes so people can come listen. I'd love to talk a little bit about we mentioned the spine race that you did, and so you were the first woman to win the event. You surpassed the previous record of 95 hours 17 minutes in 2016, and the previous female record of 109 hours. So you smashed that record from 2017. Now that took you 4 days, and from what I've read, you had about 2 hours of sleep and 7 hours of rest. Is that correct during that time?
Yeah, I think I probably had a bit more, like 3.5 hours sleep, probably. Yeah, something like that. 3 hours sleep, 3 hours of sleep, probably. Yeah.
And 2/3 of the race is in the dark. It's well known within the trail ultra community that your mind is going to play tricks with you. You're going to have hallucinations. But you, as a female, did you have any additional, how do you handle that mentally in those challenging moments that you're out there alone, you're self-supported, you can't have any runners with you on the course? Does that become an anxiety at any point of just I'm out here and I'm on my own? Do you worry about that stuff or not really?
It's a really interesting question. It's kind of interesting from the point of view of, I'm much more nervous running in cities than I am running. So where we live is rural. The hills I run in, I rarely meet people, very rarely meet people, even in the daytime, in kind of my local hills where I train. I'm not frightened running in the hills on my own. And I've got used to running in the dark because in winter, I work full time. I always train in the dark. So here in Scotland, probably half the year I train in the dark. So running in the dark itself doesn't scare me if I'm in the hills or kind of wild places, because I just feel comfortable there, and I'm much more frightened actually running at night in a city. That's where I'd be much more nervous that something was going to happen, because I think that's realistic. Why would somebody be out in the hills in the middle of nowhere waiting for randomly someone to come along? On the spine, I guess, I think, you when you're tired and your mind starts to play tricks on you, it just generally becomes more, kind of harder to cope with everything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there were, when you're asking about how I did cope with that, there are kind of lots of strategies. At one point, when I was it's more that I was feeling lonely and kind of sorry for myself. But I remember at one point literally talking out loud and talking to myself like I was another person. I was like, okay, so stop and put your coat on and get some sweets out. And I just did it. I talked out aloud because it felt comforting to hear someone else looking after me, even though it was just me looking after me. So that was like, I remember doing that. I remember singing out loud, like I sang the Spice Girls in the middle of the night, partly to stay awake because I was really falling asleep on my feet, but partly just so there would be like voices that I could hear. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about my kids, obviously. So actually, I only had one child at that point, my child, and getting home, which was a massive motivator. The kind of various coping strategies. And then sometimes you just turn off. It's like, I find running quite mindful. Kind of you just get into this sort of rhythm and you just concentrate on moving forwards, and you kind of shut everything else off. So it can be quite meditative at times as well.
Thank you for sharing that. A second question I had about this that I was curious about, I read that you chose to do that race even though you said you would never do it. Is that right? You said you'd never do the spine race because the comforts of home had meant, after having a child, had meant that your motivation had gone. And so you thought that would be an incentive by picking this incredibly tough endurance race. So tell us more about that, because I think maybe that's a point that a lot of people might find themselves in, where they are getting too comfortable at home and they know they need to do something, but they're not sure what. Why go for something really hard?
Yeah, so I guess there's kind of a few angles to that question. So you're right. I always said I would never run this. Well, I guess when I first heard about it, my reaction was, and for a few years afterwards, actually, was always, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to put yourself through running that for a week in miserable weather? We always actually, for a long time, we've been running a race that starts, it's on the same day as the start of the spine race. And so it's about 25 miles long. It's called Marsden to Edale. And actually the race crosses over with some of the spine runners. So you always see, we're running like a 4 or 5 hour race, and you see them come in the opposite direction. They have these huge bags and they're walking into the wind and they look absolutely miserable. And you know that they've still got like 250 miles to go. And you think to yourself, why on earth would you do that? So I guess that was my initial approach. But then over time, there's something about doing a challenge where you don't know if you can do it, something that's really hard, that is sort of appealing. Like it becomes like a challenge in your head. Like, could you do it? And there's something sort of there's something sort of tantalizing and in that question of whether you're actually capable of doing it. And so that, I think for me, the spine had that kind of element to it. And then you're right. Once I had my daughter, I was finding it hard to kind of, well, to be honest, it wasn't even just getting in the comfort of home. It was just the fact that you have a small child that's waking you up multiple times a night. You're not sleeping very much. You're back to work, getting up to train at 5 a.m. in the dark, in the wind and rain. It's just really difficult to do. So I signed up for something that I knew if I didn't train, it was going to be absolutely awful. But if I trained, it would be like a real challenge. Like it would be really test me. And that's, as I say, that was exciting. So it needed to be something like that, something big that I had to train for, just to motivate me to get out of bed in the morning and do it.
Okay, so I have a follow-up with that. So I was actually signed up. I visited home visited England in July, and I was there for 3 weeks. And at the end of 3 weeks, before I left, I noticed this, but not long before the race, I noticed there was a race on Snowdonia. It was, basically to the top and back down. And I signed up for it because I'd been struggling with motivation, knowing that I needed something to give me a kick, something that was just going to be, I just want to finish this. And that exactly what you said of like the challenge of, can I even do this? Like for me, the race website said you need poles. Well, I've never run with poles. So I was like, if this is asking me for poles, this is unlike anything I've ever done. However, unfortunately, my kids ended up getting sick the week of the race, and they were supposed to be staying with my immunocompromised aunt. So I didn't end up doing it because I couldn't leave them with her. But I did feel that like pull to get ready for it that I hadn't felt, and since have been struggling to get back. But I say that because even though this 57K race would have challenged me, I still was pretty confident I could do it. Whereas, do you think often when people are picking goals like this, they may pick something that seems like it would be a real challenge, but maybe is a bit easier? Like for me, when I've already run 34 miles, it's pretty, unless I fell and badly hurt myself, I probably would have been able to do it. Do you think people should pick something even harder, or do you think it doesn't have to be that?
I think it just depends on you as a person, doesn't it? And also like what your level's at. And it depends why you do it. If you're doing it to motivate yourself and that's enough to motivate you, then surely then you don't have to do anything more. Then, then you've answered the question. For me, it's an interesting one because for me personally, with the spine, I honestly thought that I could have done it in 7 days. I was pretty confident that unless I actually fell and injured myself, I could finish the spine. But it was a different question when I asked myself, could I race it? Because realistically, I went to the spine wanting to win it. I mean, I thought that I had the chance of being able to do really well. But I went there wanting to win it. And it's a totally different question. If you're actually racing to be at the front of the field in a race like that, then it's an unknown, because I think then it can go very wrong. So, that's where the kind of uncertainty came into it for me, because I mean, me and my husband actually ran the spine in that Pennine Way in 6.5 days a few years earlier, just staying in B&Bs each night. Like I was pretty sure I could do it in that time, but it's just whether I could actually race it in a fast time. So it's interesting because that brings on to another point. The only race I think where I'm like genuinely thinking it's unlikely statistically that I'll be able to finish is Barkley. Like that's why I signed up for Barkley, and that's why I'm probably gonna have to go back, because that's like there isn't any, I don't think there's any other race where you'd be as likely to not finish as that.
So true. And just to wrap that point up, I ask that because I feel like a lot of the time runners like you and I who have a competitive background, we can kind of have a good gauge on that. But I think sometimes people in the recreational space find it hard, and they might pick something that seems challenging, but if they're honest with themselves, they know they could do easily. So I love that element you said of like racing it. So if it's something that you can say maybe on the surface, I just want to complete it, but then you can take it to another level and try and see how quickly you can do it, then that's adding that challenge to it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Barkley before we wrap up here. Now, you were the first woman since 2013 to complete 3 of 5 loops. Was that last year, 21?
It's this year.
Oh, this year, 22. Okay. Yeah. And no woman has ever finished the race. Tell us about why that is so. I guess we have covered Barkley before, but for someone who doesn't know what that is, how is there such a thing that a race has no finishers?
Yeah, I think Barkley is actually deserves, unlike most races that use the description unique, I think Barkley actually deserves it. It's hard to even call it a race. It's more of a kind of challenge, and it's more of a challenge like for each individual. Like you're not really racing other people, you're racing yourself, or you're kind of challenging yourself. So you have to do 5 laps of a course that's maybe 20 miles long, who knows, with maybe around 5,000 meters of ascent per lap, which is a lot. There's is easily more than double, probably going on triple the UTMB ascent in the sort of distance of the UTMB. So it's huge. The ascent is huge. You're doing it in kind of like off trails, in like really rough terrain, lots of brambles. You have to it's weird. You have to find, instead of checkpoints, find books and rip out pages. There's lots of things to kind of mess with your head a bit. The weather is terrible. It can be terrible. There's lots of, the race just has lots of kind of quirks that makes it different. But yeah, that's sorry. What I've gone off. I've gone off piece. What was your question?
The question was like, tell us a bit about it. And okay. So that is something that, and you've done that. So that is something that you want to, I mean, with your background, it does seem to lend itself that you would be the person who is able to do this, be that first woman to finish it. So that is a goal.
Yes. And yeah, sorry, now I've remembered what I was saying. So I think, like, for me, like, the challenge of Barkley would just be for me. Like, I think it would be amazing to be the first woman to finish it, but that's not like the thing that really drives me. It's just a personal challenge. So like, the fact that I'm a woman is secondary in kind of my thinking. Be nice from the point of view of women all around. Also, I think Laz has said a few times, I think slightly tongue-in-cheek and slightly because he wants to rile the women to actually do it. But he said a few times that a woman can't finish it. This race has had like no finishers since 2017, I think. So it's only, I think, 15 people have ever finished it. So in I think it's more than 30 years. So it's, the chance of finishing is pretty small. But I think personally it's not impossible. The course changes a little bit each year, so I can't vouch for the course that there would be next year or the year after. And also the weather is really changeable in the park. So if you had like deep snow, I think it would be impossible. Like, even if you were a superhero. So I think there's lots of kind of unknowns in this kind of challenge race. But I think certainly from what I've seen, I think a woman will finish. It's just a matter of time and then who it is, and a little bit of luck. There's a lot of things that need to come together, I think, for this race. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to following that. Is that something you think you will continue to keep trying until you get it?
I think I'd like to go back. I mean, now one of my things now is obviously like increasingly concerned about how much I travel around the world. So to go and do Barkley, it's a long distance flight. So I mean, I can't travel there by land, sea. So all I can do is offset the flights, which is what I'll do if I go back. So I think I'll go back at least once. I'm not sure that I'll be able to go back year after year after year, keep trying. So let's hope I can do a better job next time I go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jasmin, I have loved learning about you and your story. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners today?
No, I mean, it's been lovely to talk to you. And it's been lovely to think about these things as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing with us about the Green Runners, about your experiences with the Spine Race, about Barkley, and we touched a little bit on UTMB. But I encourage people to go follow along and find out what you're up to. You tend to update you have a blog that you update sometimes, and
I have a blog. So I usually update that whenever I've done anything like big or that I was aiming for.
And that's the best place for people to find you.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter as well. So I'm not a massive social media person, but I'll generally have put stuff on Twitter and I have a blog.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Can't wait to see what the future holds. And thank you for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's been lovely. Okay, thanks. Bye.
The Running for Real podcast and everything we do here at Running for Real would not be possible if it wasn't for the Running for Real team. While I am the person who you hear from most often and maybe the face of the brand, the rest of our team are such critical pieces of what we do. And without them, I think I'd just be running around in circles with ideas. So I want to take a moment to thank our team. To Jeremy Nessel, who's been with me since the very beginning. Kat McKay, Sally Pontarelli, Kelsey Wang, Sandy Gutierrez, Louise Murphy, Andrew Basola, Alexandria Will, and Maria Vargas. Thank you to each and every one of you for all that you give to Running for Real and our community. I appreciate you, and I'm so thankful for having you as a part of the team. I really admire all that Jasmin has done. Her heart, the pureness and simplicity that she brings to our sport is something that in many ways we have lost. And I really appreciated the perspective and the reminder of just the simplicity of our sport. So thankful for Jasmin for coming on the show today. And of course, being an inspiring role model for women everywhere, even though, as you heard, she does it for herself. She's not trying to get out there to prove anything. She's doing it because it's what she wants to do and believes in herself to do. Now, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today. Athletic Greens, you can get that 1 year free supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 plus 5 free travel packs to keep you running nice and healthy as we head into the winter months. You can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to go check out that special offer. And also thank you to Tracksmith. Now, as you heard with Jasmin, one of the key things we can do as runners is to continue to wear our clothes for as long as possible. And that is not going to happen by us wearing or buying clothes that are going to break down quickly. I've had my Tracksmith items for 3 years now, and they are in exactly the same quality level they were when I first bought them. That is long lasting. That is what we need. So this is exactly what Jasmin was talking about, having those items and keeping them for a long time. And Tracksmith is exactly that. So you can go to tracksmith.com and use code TINA15 to go get yourself free shipping, plus 5% of your order will go to my favorite nonprofit, Runners for Public Lands, which is an environmental nonprofit that is really doing stuff in, surprise, surprise, the running community. You can also go to a link in the show notes to see some of my favorite items and things that I use and have been using for many years. There's links there in the show notes. Finally, I want you to go check out some of the things I mentioned earlier in the episode. That is the Together Run. If you haven't done one of those already, go check it out. If you are someone who is working through amenorrhea or Red S, please let me know. I'm working on something for you. And finally, if you haven't checked out Weekly Strides, these are these weekly episodes that are kind of fun, kind of silly, very real, very Tina. I would love for you to check them out. Thanks so much for listening, my friends. You can find everything we talked about in the show notes at runningforreal.com/episode 319. I will see you on Monday for a Together Run, on Wednesday for a Weekly Stride, and next Friday for a regular episode. I'll see you then.